revolution, the overthrow and the thorough replacement of an established government or political system by the people governed. A radical and pervasive change in society and the social structure. A sudden action often
Marie Antoinette, Dauphine of France. I was forced to leave with all of my earthly possessions, even my dog, there on that island of Wherein. I was required to abandon all things Austrian and become the embodiment of all things French. I was publicly and formally stripped of my nationality and then attired in French clothing, told only that the bride may retain nothing belonging to a foreign court. Austria. I married Louis Auguste de France on April 19, 1770. When we received word that Louis XV had died, my husband and I fell to our knees and cried, "God, have mercy, guide us, we are too young to reign." So I would write of the coronation in a letter to my mother. It is clear that these people, out of their misery, have treated us so well. We are all the more bound to work for their happiness. The king seems to realize this too. As for me, if I live to be 100 years, I shall never forget the day of the coronation.
Can one also appreciate in the good innocence of his
The year was 1789. The issues that arose after my husband, King Louis XVI, called the Estates General for the first time in over 160 years were many. The mere fact that the Estates General had not convened for about 150 years should speak to its efficacy. A standoff between the king and parliament led him to summon it for 1789. Absolute monarchy meant that only the king could call the Estates General by a king whose monarchical power had been gradually collapsing for years. In the 17th and 18th century, absolute monarchy was also known as the divine right of kings. It is outlined in the Epistle to the Romans in chapter 13. It is with this mind the godly king rules. The monarch as first servant of the state. The monarch must be inspired by God and accountable to him, living untouched biblical doctrine, and so declaring that the moral duty of men and societies is towards the living Christ and his church. Historically, Roman Catholicism had been the state religion in France. This was so because of the signing of the Edict of Fontainebleau. It was signed by Louis XIII, my husband's great-great-grandfather, in 1685. But in 1787, my husband drafted and signed the Edict of Tolerance, and later, the Edict of Versailles. Official acts that offered relief to non-Catholic worshippers, giving Protestants and Jews alike the right to practice their religions, as well as civil and legal status. But now France is facing the overthrow of this godly monarchy in favor of patriotism. The triumph of humanism and humanistic law over Christianity and Christian law. Patriotism would replace the church and Christianity. Patriots would be seen as the social changing force, rather than preachers proclaiming the gospel of Jesus Christ. The Republic France would become the new God. So accordingly, blasphemy would now be defined as any move against the state. The true patriot would swear allegiance to the new God. the Republic's constitution. So you see, when the king called together the Estates General, it was to him a last resort. His monarchical power was collapsing, and society had been divided into 3 estates, with clergy being the first estate, those who worked for the church, priests, bishops, and nuns. This was the smallest estate in terms of population, about 1,000 members. Nobility formed the second estate. French nobility held the highest positions in the land and did not have to pay many taxes. This estate consisted of about 400,000 members. The third estate was comprised of the common people, representing 98% of the population, boasting about 27 million members. It was their moral values I sought to emulate, those of the commoner. This is why I conceptualized and created L'amour de la reine, the little hamlet. On the grounds of Versailles in 1783, a natural garden and farmhouse, complete with dairy, poultry yard, and stock streams for fishing. For me, it represented what I perceived to be the purity, virtue, innocence, and simplicity of peasant life. I had grown much as a woman by this time. I had my natural and 7 adopted children, which I treasured. I had grown more devout in my faith, having grown closer to my devout sister-in-law, Madame Elizabeth of France. My love for God and the people of France had begun to influence my every decision. I even commissioned my dressmakers to redesign my wardrobe. I would wear only simple gauze dresses. Sometimes a ribbon would be tied at the waist. It was my hope that the impoverished women of France could better copy my dress, as they had desired to do, but could not because of the expense of the opulent gowns, high-powdered wigs, and heavy makeup, which had been originally designed to diminish the scars done by those who had suffered smallpox. I adored the newfound freedom and the precious days spent with my children at Wherein, the hamlet, playing at being a milkmaid and tending to these sheep in the humble dress of a shepherdess. But alas, my attempts at simplicity were construed as petty spectacle. The many hours spent at L'amour de la reine with my children and other women outside the sight and supervision of my husband gave rise to more rumors.
Louis Auguste must not hear.
Underground, cartoons and engravings continued to be smuggled into France, portraying me in every compromising pose imaginable. To make matters worse, my signature was forged at this time in an event which would become known as the affair of the diamond necklace. It would send to prison the likes of Ratu de Valette, a prostitute who happened to look a lot like me and was bribed to impersonate me in a garden by the moonlight, and Comtesse Jean de Lemort, who had pretended to be my friend. The theft of this very expensive white diamond necklace, by means of my forged signature, would further ruin my reputation. Even though the perpetrators were caught and tried, Cardinal de Rohan was even arrested in full white robes while preparing to celebrate a royal mass. Repugnant. He was later acquitted, along with co-conspirator, alchemist, magician, and Freemason, Alessandro Cagliostro. We were beginning to understand the influence that the Illuminists were exercising through Freemasonry, which was emanating from the Jacobin lodges, which were popping up everywhere, subtly convincing the people of France that I was the cause of all of their ills.
Non, oui, non,
I did attempt to fight back in the midst of the image war. I commissioned a painting with my neck conspicuously bare, vacant of any type of necklace. I commissioned another painting with my 3 remaining children and the empty bassinet.
How long, O Lord, holy and true, dost thou not avenge our blood on them that dwell on the earth? Or have the iniquities of our ancestors lifted your righteous arm, visiting the sins of the fathers upon the children, unto the 3rd and 4th generation of them that hate you? Is the curse of Psalm 5, verse 9, all that has been left for our portion? Please pardon now the intermarriage of my ancestors, the Habsburgs. Hadn't my mother made your ways known to her 12 children, that we should walk in them? Please forget, O Lord, the immorality of the house of Bourbon's kings. For it was King Louis XIII who said, I have loved war too much. But who also said to the next king, never forget your obligation to God and try to remain at peace with your neighbors. Let the suffering that was old begin to depart. For we have not been redeemed by corruptible things, but by blood, the blood of Christ. Have mercy on me, for I am shaken by the succession of blows. Now let the words of 1 Peter 4:15 be at play. If any man suffers as a Christian, let him not be ashamed, but let him glorify God on his behalf. I commit all into your hands. The Lord giveth, and the Lord taketh away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. After the death of my mother, Marie Antoinette, in 1780, I gave myself completely to the raising of my children, even taking part in their education. I was the first queen in recent history to have done so. My first daughter, Marie Therese Charlotte, was born in 1778. Poor little girl. She was not what was desired by some who had looked for a Bourbonnier, but she was no less dear to me on that account. Her custom at the time dictated that the queen gave birth in full view of courtiers. After 12 hours of labor in that stuffy room full of curious onlookers, I suffered convulsions and fell unconscious. I wasn't informed of the child's sex until hours later. But then, as I held her in my arms, I told her, my son would have been property of the state, but you shall be mine. Next came Louis Joseph Xavier, my little prince. He was born in 1781. I doted on him, even before he fell ill. After that, I took charge of his care and was with him as he died of tuberculosis. Losing a second child had leveled me, and yet the French people who were instead preparing for the next meeting of the Estates General, amidst rumors that the Queen wanted to bathe in their blood, hardly seemed to notice. Oh, my poor little prince. Next, another boy, Louis Charles, in March of 1785. My first child, a beautiful baby girl, was born premature. We buried Sophie Beatrix of France just 1 month shy of her first birthday. Louis Joseph Xavier followed her to heaven 2 years later. He was just 7 years old. Rumors continued to spread. Resentments continued to grow. And the day came when my husband was forced to call the first meeting of the Estates General. He opened the May 5th session of 1789 with a speech in which he reviewed the circumstances which had led to the convocation and what he expected from the Estates General. He declared himself a peaceful king and the people's greatest friend. The financial woes that plagued the people of France were the result of a culmination of factors, a few of which were directly related to absolute monarchy. There was a large royal family whose expenditures were paid for by the state. Then there was an unwillingness on the part of many of the privileged class to relinquish part of their financial privileges. Insufficient taxation. But beyond that, there was a long-term effects of many expensive wars. Between the years of 1740 and 1783, the War of Secession, the 7 Years' War, and the founding of the American War of Independence, France delivered over 1,066 million livres to the North American colonists, while seeking independence from Great Britain, the incarnation of the Enlightenment spirit against English tyranny. France, who had been rebuilding her navy and other forces after the defeat in the 7 Years' War, understood only that an opportunity had arisen in which she might weaken her perennial enemy. When my husband's financial advisor, Jacques Necker, raised the funds that would serve to support the American Revolution, he had done so through loans rather than raising the taxes of the privileged class. They were an untapped source of revenue for the crown, but there was powerful opposition to any attempt to change the status quo. Yet in all of this, the public perception remained that I had single-handedly ruined the nation's finances. France began providing arms and ammunition. After my husband's 1776 meeting with Freemason and Diest, Benjamin Franklin, if only my husband had seen how the American revolutionary spirit would affect France, now that religious rule would be replaced by democratic rule, and the easily manipulated public puppet officials who seemed to be vying for the control of France. But just who was pulling the strings? From the memoirs of the Marquis de Lafayette, who was elected as the representative of the second state of nobility, May 5th, 1789. The Jacobin Club and the courtiers will destroy the monarchy. It is hard to understand how the Jacobin minority and a handful of Marseillais made themselves masters of Paris. Jacobin, a member of a democratic club established in France in 1789. The Jacobins were the most ruthless and radical political party of the political groups formed in the wake of the French Revolution. The Duc d'Orléans, cousin to my husband, the Dauphin of France, ardent revolutionary and Grand Master of the Jacobin Club, had been in the meantime buying up all the grain and selling them abroad, causing the starvation of the people of France and blaming it on the monarchy. In his spare time, he passed out money and bread to those same peasants, while imparting to them the same Enlightenment principles that philosophers like Voltaire had used to indoctrinate the French intellectuals years before. Illuminist Victor Kitty Mirabeau was elected to represent the Third Estate on May 5th, 1789, at that first meeting of the Estates General. Because of the Third Estate, greater numerical representation, over 27 million citizens, Parliament stepped in and invoked an old rule, mandating that each estate had only one vote, regardless of size. The Third Estate, understanding that their vote can be overridden by the First and Second Estates, demanded that their vote be doubled, succumbing to pressure from the press and from Jacques Necker, his financial advisor and overconfident of his influence over the nobility and clergy. The king conceded. The king had gravely misjudged the situation, and the interests of the monarchy were outvoted by proxy, as the three estates reached a stalemate, resulting in the swaying of members of the First and Second Estates, who felt they had more power to lose to the Third Estate than they stood to gain from the king, moved toward the mounting influence of the Third Estate, who are now calling themselves the National Assembly. The Assembly was originally called for the purpose of initiating necessary financial reforms. The Estates General did not pass any reforms, but instead fell into a pattern of defying a king whose reign had actually served to strengthen the middle class. On June 17, 1789, the Third Estate breaks away from the Estates General and begins to refer to itself as the National Assembly. The National Assembly begins to recruit members from the other two estates. On June 20th, the royal household was still mourning the death of our oldest son, who had died 2 weeks earlier. The Third Estate, now known as the National Assembly, has repeatedly defied orders to meet separately and is locked out of a meeting of these three estates at Versailles by Jacques Necker. They move their deliberation to a nearby tennis court. The tennis court oath refers to an oath taken by the Third Estate, led by the Comte de Mirabeau, and now called the National Assembly. They're in that secret room at the tennis court. They vow not to separate until the Constitution of the Kingdom is established. The oath was a pledge signed on July 11th by 576 attendees out of 577. The oath was an assertion of power and a revolutionary act. The National Assembly invites the other two estates, but makes it clear that they will conduct the nation's affairs with or without them. The National Assembly makes their own laws, running the country. This forces the king to order the clergy and the noble class to join the Third Estate in the National Assembly. After hearing of the mistreatments of the Third Estate by the Estates General and feeding of the infectious revolutionary spirit that had by now permeated France, which culminated on July 13th, 1789 with the storming of the Bastille. This sacrilegious act of tearing down the king's symbol of divinely ordained power. The king had asked the Duc Le Rochen Poilu whether there had been a revolt in the city. The Duke gravely replied, "No, sire, it is not revolt, it is revolution."